Hi everyone, this time I'm reviewing another past paper from the May-June 2023 exam on language in the self. You must remember one thing whenever I analyze a past paper, I make an effort to cover all the theoretical frameworks that you can apply in your upcoming exam. Now the question is how to respond to these questions in exams. There are four steps here. First thing, identify the main issues in the text. Whatever text is given to you, you just identify all the important issues that are discussed in the text. Then connect those issues to the theoretical framework or to all the theories that talks about how language shape and reflect the personal and social identities. And the third step is use specific details from the text, means you are giving examples from the text. And the last one is integrate ideas and examples from your wider study. Apart from the text, if you know something related to that topic, you can mention that as well. First, I want you to look at the words and the phrases that I highlighted. For example, the harmful, ableist language, ingrained expressions have damaging effect, fall on deaf ears. Ableist language means dumb choice, blind eye, crazy, psychopathic, bipolar. These common words can be microsalts. So, falling on deaf ears, people associate deafness with willful ignorance. When we talk about ableist language, you must remember names of the sociologist as Erving Goffman, who gave a concept of stigma. So, what is this concept? According to him, stigma is basically a process by which the reaction of others they spoil normal identity. That comes from what is socially acceptable and what is socially not acceptable. And Goffman identifies three forms here. A person may be labeled with a stigma if they have a character flaw, for example, a physical one, or they are a part of a group that are not accepted by the society, or they are not accepted normal. So we can say this in this article, the deaf people are stigmatized, means there is something wrong with them. So we discriminate them, making them feel like outsiders because their identity has gone wrong somewhere, or we as normal people have spoiled their identity. So we can claim here that this article directly connects ableist language to Goffman's stigma when it mentions microsalts. The author states it is mentioned there, however, for disabled people like me, these common words can be microsalts. For instance, falling on deaf ears provides evidence that most people associate deafness with willful ignorance. So the phrases here like fallen on deaf ears is an absolute attack to deaf individuals. This is a micro salt. You can say it's a micro one, it's a small one. So at micro level, it's an everyday action, often unconscious one, but it carries a negative judgment connected to their disability. Similarly, when we call a choice dumb or stigmatize someone as crazy, it implies that they are foolish or unstable, and this is damaging their social identity and self worth. While it is not explicitly mentioned in the article, but implicitly, we can analyze how the use of ableist language and the call to change it can be understood through CAT. And what is CAT? That is Howard Giles' Communication Accommodation Theory. So that is CAT, which explains how the people adjust their communication styles during interactions. And there are two parts here, there are two ideas here. One is the convergence, and the other is divergence. So, convergence means when the individuals adapt their communication to become more similar to others, seeking approval or reducing social distance. But divergence means when they emphasize differences, often maintain group identity or create social distance. So we can assume in this article, non-disabled individuals on the basis of CAT, that is communication accommodation theory, they unconsciously using ableist language, which can be seen as a form of linguistic divergence from disabled individuals. It means that they set them apart, means their language created barriers. So it establishes a linguistic norm that excludes or marginalizes the experiences of disabled people. It signals a lack of accommodation to the sensitivities and identities of disabled people. So this article implicitly demands for a conscious linguistic convergence. When it is said, I like being deaf, when I see the word deaf on the page, it evokes a feeling of pride for my community. So by using inclusive language, our communication can be more accommodating and respectful of disabled individuals. Calling a person with a disability instead of calling disabled person can be seen as an attempt to converge towards a language style which is less threatening and more accommodating. You can also quote cooperative principle here, which involve four maxims of conversation. There are maxim of quality, quantity, relevance, and manner. The maxim of quality says be truthful, And the maxim of quantity say be as informative as required. Relevance says be relevant to the conversation. And manner says be clear, brief, and unambiguous. So in this article, ableist language can violate the maxim of quality as well as manner in a subtle but harmful way. Fallen on deaf ears implies deafness, which equates to not listening or understanding. It is a generalization. Dumb choice links intellectual disability to foolishness. It is a harmful oversimplification. So, the use of ableist terms can also be irrelevant and even disruptive to creating an inclusive and respectful social environment. It emphasizes casual expression over social consideration and respect for people with disability. Then we have another theory that is Cherry's muted group theory. As the word muted itself telling you what this theory talk about. It argues that women and several other marginalized groups are often muted because their perspectives are not valued in the dominant language system, which is often shaped by dominant groups as males. This can lead to difficulty expressing themselves and having their voices heard in the dominant discourses. In this article, the author, who is basically deaf, he expresses that how it always thinks to be reminded that for many, the word deaf has little to do with what I love most. So, in fact, this connotations are almost exclusively negative. Ableist language contributes to the muting of these disabled voices and perspectives. The current dominant language system, what we have right now, is saturated with ableist terms and idioms that frame disability negatively. The author describes in this article the positive experiences of deaf individuals, which are muted now. The dominant discourse emphasizes a negative framework around disability, making it harder for disabled people to express their own positive self perception. Here we can also talk about Tajfeld's theory on social identity, which says that individuals derive the part of their self concept, the self esteem from their membership in the social groups. And the author statements here in this article, I like being deaf, I like the silence as well as the rich cultural and language deafness affords me. When I see the word deaf on the page, it evokes a feeling of pride for my community. And here the author expresses a strong positive social identity as a member of the deaf community. Ableist language directly threatens this positive social identity of the deaf people. When the deaf is primarily associated with the negative connotations, no positive connotations attached with the deaf, with the word deaf, like ignorance, inability to hear, understand. It expresses this positive value of the deaf community. So, ableist language, by framing deafness negatively or by portraying deafness negatively, it contributes to the negative social identity being imposed upon deaf people, hindering the ability to maintain a positive self concept based on their group membership. I want you to look at the sentences that are highlighted here. There is a sense when people use disability language, as said by Jamie Hale, that they are seeing ways of being as lesser. It is often not a conscious attempt to harm disabled people, but it acts to construct a worldview. It means we are building a worldview in which existing as a disabled person is considered negative. And again, Hale adds that using disability as a shorthand for something negative and inferior reinforces negative attitudes and actions and fuels the large system of oppression in place. We build a world, means this is very important. We build a world with the language we use for as long, I mean, this is how the language shapes the reality. The language shape our identity. And for as long as we are comfortable using this language, we continue to build and reinforce disableist structures. Here it reminds me of Leda Boroditsky's work, which explores how language can subtly shape our thought processes and cognitive patterns. This article implicitly demonstrates how ableist language, its structures of thought process, to the types of the phrases that we use. Phrases like dumb choice, crazy, bipolar, it link disability to negative qualities. Ableist language shapes our cognitive associations and the thought patterns, which is related to the disability. If you're constantly hearing and using phrases like these that equate disability with the negative traits, for example, dumb means intellectual disability, crazy means mental illness, our brains become wired to associate disability with negativity only. This is not just about vocabulary, it is about the cognitive framework that language reinforces. This is how language shapes our thought process.